Hi, my name is Breaden Madden. I'm a psychologist at the Institute of Musicians Medicine in Dresden. This contribution to the Long Night of Science is a presentation of a research project about emotion regulation in musical practice. This project was originally presented at the Future Directions of Music Cognition Conference at The Ohio State University in March 2021. Hi everyone, my name is Breaden Madden and I'm with the Institute of Musicians Medicine in Dresden. So I'm really happy for the opportunity to speak at this event, so thanks very much to all the organizers for putting this together. Today I would like to talk about our project Regulating Functional and Hedonic Emotions in the Pursuit of Musical Practice Goals. So to start off, much of the literature on emotion regulation emphasizes that people regulate their emotions for hedonic benefits. This is to feel better and avoid feeling worse. However, there is increasing support for an instrumental perspective. And this is when people regulate their emotions because they believe their emotions are useful to the pursuit of their goals. We see this in a variety of contexts. In a video game scenario, for example, participants were motivated to experience anger because they anticipated a confrontational task and they believed that anger was useful for this task. Probably the best example of instrumental regulation comes from sport. Athletes are well known for seeking out the emotions that they think will benefit their performance. Most athletes seem to prefer pleasant and motivating emotions, but there is also a minority of athletes that prefer unpleasant emotions. Okay, so in our everyday lives, the emotions that are pleasant to experience can sometimes overlap with the emotions that are useful to experience. So people can regulate their emotions for hedonic reasons or instrumental reasons, but also possibly both. So this raises the question of what emotions do we want to feel in a given situation? Our emotional preferences might depend on the type of goals that we pursue. So if we pursue a short-term goal, for example, or a goal that offers us some kind of immediate reward, we might prefer to experience hedonic emotions. But if we pursue a long-term goal or a goal that's particularly challenging, then we might be willing to forego immediate hedonic reward and instead prefer instrumental emotions, the emotions that promote the attainment of this goal. And this might actually involve prioritizing unpleasant emotions, because if we think about what emotions can do for us, regulated pleasant emotions, they can be pleasant and they can be useful, but regulated unpleasant emotions, they can only be useful. So we are applying these principles in the context of musical practice. Practice has many benefits for musicians, but it's not always fun and there's no guarantee of progress. But musicians can persevere through these challenges nonetheless. So our position is that musicians will adopt specific regulated emotional stances which support the goals that they pursue, but which are also in line with the impact that they believe emotions will have on their musical practice. So we're investigating three specific hypotheses. The first is that musicians will use affect improvement strategies in their practice more often than affect worsening strategies. Second, greater use of affect worsening strategies will be associated with stronger endorsement of the possible benefits of unpleasant emotions. And finally, in contrast to musicians that pursue short-term goals, musicians that pursue long-term goals may seek to experience unpleasant emotions to support their musical practice. So, to investigate our hypotheses, we put together an online questionnaire, and this questionnaire seeks information on several topics, including the musical training of our participants, what practice goals they're pursuing, their meta-emotion beliefs, and these are statements concerning what impact emotions might have on musical practice. They also reported their emotion regulation strategies, and we use two subscales here. Affect improvement strategies. These are strategies that are intended to bring about pleasant emotions and improve your emotional state, and affect worsening strategies. And these are strategies that are intended to bring about unpleasant emotions and make your emotional state worse. Finally, participants completed a scale of specific regulated emotions, and this is a list of high and low valence and arousal states, and participants indicated how much they would like to either increase or decrease these emotions in order to support their musical practice. We distributed this questionnaire to a large range of music institutions around the world, including orchestras, conservatoires, and music universities, and we recruited a sample of participants that were predominantly classical musicians with a median of 16 years experience. The first step of our analysis focused on these meta-emotion beliefs, and we performed a principal component analysis on these questionnaire items, and we identified two factors. The first factor we called emotion-driven practice, and this is the belief that a musician must have the right emotional state in order to get the most out of their practice, and that they actively seek to experience whatever emotions, positive and/or negative, will help improve their practice. Our second factor we called non-hedonic driven practice, and this is the belief that a musician doesn't always have to feel good in order to practice effectively, and that unpleasant emotions such as anger can help improve their practice. The construction of these factors suggests that there is some overlap relating to the possible benefits of unpleasant emotions, so we correlated these factors and found that there is a statistically significant but weak correlation between them. So we will leave these factors off to one side next to our central concept here, and in a few moments we will add some more results to this diagram. The second step of our analysis focused on musical practice goals. So we performed a similar principal component analysis on these questionnaire items, and we also identified two factors here. The first factor we called mastery, and this is practicing music in order to master musical and instrumental skills. The second factor we called enjoyment, and this is practicing music for enjoyment and for recreation. So once we had identified each of our factors, we used a median split to create a high and low category for each factor. So a musician who had, for example, a high score for mastery, we described them as having strong mastery orientation. A musician who had a high score for non-hedonic driven practice, we described them as having strong endorsement for this belief. We used these high and low categories as between subjects factors for a series of MANOVAs, and at this point we included the emotion regulation strategies. Our first MANOVA focused on differences in emotion regulation strategies used by musicians who hold different meta-emotion beliefs. We found a significant main effect of belief endorsement, and the main points arising is that strong endorsement for non-hedonic driven practice was associated with greater use of affect worsening strategies. Strong endorsement for emotion-driven practice was associated with less use of affect worsening strategies, but greater use of affect improvement strategies. Our second MANOVA focused on differences in meta-emotion beliefs held by musicians who pursue different goals. We also found a significant main effect of goal orientation here, with the main points arising that strong mastery orientation was associated with stronger endorsement of non-hedonic driven practice. However, strong orientation for enjoyment was associated with weaker endorsement of non-hedonic driven practice and of emotion-driven practice. So here is an overview of the findings from our previous MANOVAs, showing this network of connections between musical practice goals and meta-emotion beliefs and these emotion regulation strategies. The final step of our analysis focused on which emotions are regulated in order to support musical practice. And in order to compare very contrasting approaches to practice, we created two subgroups of musicians on the combined basis of their practice goals and their emotion beliefs. Our first subgroup we called enjoyment positive. This is a strong enjoyment orientation and low endorsement of non-hedonic driven practice. This group consisted mostly of student musicians who were younger, who had less lifetime experience in music. Our second subgroup we called mastery non-hedonic. This is a strong mastery orientation with strong endorsement of non-hedonic driven practice. This group consisted mostly of professional musicians. This group was older and they had more lifetime experience playing music. Once we had defined our subgroups, we can take a look at how these groups are regulating their emotions in practice. So on this plot, the blue responses refer to the mastery group and the red responses refer to the enjoyment group. On the y-axis, we can see each of the emotion categories that musicians responded to, and on the x-axis, we can see the preferred intensity of regulated emotions. Negative values here refer to when emotions are decreased or downregulated, and positive values refer to when emotions are increased or upregulated. When we compare how these subgroups are regulating emotions, we can see a couple of points of similarity and of dissimilarity. The first similarity is that both subgroups sought to substantially increase a range of pleasant emotions, including calmness, energy, and happiness. Also, both subgroups sought to substantially reduce a range of unpleasant emotions, including anxiety, gloom, downheartedness, and sluggishness. However, the main point of dissimilarity can be seen with respect to the anger and nervousness categories. Here, the mastery group sought to increase these emotions to a moderate extent and to a significantly greater extent compared to the enjoyment group. Furthermore, the enjoyment group also preferred to decrease anger to a substantial and significantly greater extent than the mastery group. So, to start off the discussion of these findings, we see support for all three of our hypotheses. First, musicians used affect improvement strategies in their practice more often than affect worsening strategies. Second, the greater use of affect worsening strategies was associated with stronger endorsement of non-hedonic driven practice. Just as a quick reminder, this factor includes specific component relating to the possible benefits of unpleasant emotions. Finally, mastery-oriented musicians sought to experience anger and nervousness in order to support their musical practice. However, these emotions were sought in conjunction with several pleasant emotions. Our discussion points relate to mastery orientation. Research already tells us that mastery-oriented musicians have a more diverse set of learning strategies in their practice. So it is possible that these musicians have a more diverse set of emotion beliefs. These beliefs may arise as a consequence of greater exposure to the challenges of mastering musical and instrumental skills. Furthermore, if these musicians are seeking out pleasant and unpleasant emotions together, this mixed emotional state, we view this as a possible advantage to having a mastery orientation. It may be a regulation decision that longer lifetime experience has brought to light, given that the musicians in the mastery subgroup had greater experience, and it might actually support the long-term development of musical skills, given that the musicians in this subgroup, the majority of them identified as professionals. To summarize, affect improvement strategies and pleasant emotions were prioritized in general in musical practice. However, some musicians may be willing to experience unpleasant emotions as a tool to support the pursuit of their mastery goals. With this in mind, we think that there is a health and well-being perspective that's worth considering. Having unpleasant emotional experiences can negatively impact our psychological health, and it can impact our motor control, so this is something that musicians might want to be aware of. We think that future research can focus on strategies to optimize functional emotions. If functional emotions happen to be unpleasant, then we want ways that musicians can experience these emotions in an effective way. So finally, we hope that this study and future findings on this topic will provide musicians with novel skills for better pursuit of their practice goals. Here is a list of some further reading, our funding statement, and our contact information. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.